Hey guys, how's it going? Happy Wednesday. As you guys know, we are not going to be in person for the next 3 months because of the pandemic. So right now we are going to work on a little mini lesson online. So I'm going to there's going to be two parts of it today. We're going to be watching a movie, then you guys are going to break off and you guys are going to work through a worksheet that's going to allow you to work on the different factors, supply and demand that we're going to talk about today. And then we're going to regroup, come back, and I'm going to go through and walk you guys through some of those answers and look at the graphical representations with the supply and demand graphs. So to begin, we have a video that we're going to watch. It's about 6 minutes long, and I don't know if you guys are big Indiana Jones fans. I personally am not, but this guy really, really likes Indiana Jones and has a sweet AC/DC belt, so I figured that we could watch this one. But yeah, I'd like you guys to pay attention just to the supply and demand factors that he talks about and how we can relate that to the market economy, which we've been studying with for the past couple days. So keep in mind those factors of supply and demand, and we'll work on the application here in a little bit. So please watch. I know you guys have a lot of distractions around you, but I'd like you to pay attention and listen to what our friend has to say here.
Hey, how you doing, students? This is Mr. Clifford. Welcome to Econ Movies. Today we're going to look at the economics in Indiana Jones. As you know, Dr. Jones isn't an economist. He's an archaeologist.
We do not follow maps to buried treasure, and X never, ever marks the spot.
Sounds pretty boring. Let's look at one of the most important concepts in all of economics: demand and supply. It all starts with buyers and sellers.
The opening me no hachi. There he is.
Sirachi's a real small guy.
They come together to negotiate a price that works for both of them. The buyer wants to pay the lowest price possible, but the seller doesn't have to accept that offer.
The diamond, Lau. The deal was for the diamond.
Now, if the buyer really wants that product, he's going to have to increase the price to something the seller is willing to take. In this example, there's just one buyer and one seller. When you start analyzing multiple buyers and sellers, then you're looking at markets. To understand markets, Indiana Jones needs to find somebody to teach him demand and supply. To learn about demand and supply, let's pick a market that we can analyze. So let's pick something like pet snakes.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Let's start with demand. To have demand, buyers must be willing and able to buy pet snakes. Now, obviously, some people like pet snakes and some people don't.
There's a big snake in the plane, Chuck! Oh, that's just my pet snake, Reggie! I hate snakes, Chuck! I hate them!
When the price is really high, let's say $100 for a pet snake, people don't want to buy very many snakes. In this case, only 10 would be purchased. After all, there's a bunch of substitute pets you could buy instead. You could buy a pet tarantula, a pet elephant, or a pet camel.
No camels.
Okay, no camels, no camels. If the price was lower for snakes, consumers would be willing and able to buy more snakes. In this case, if the price is down at 2, then consumers would want to buy 300. So this downward sloping demand curve shows you the law of demand, the inverse relationship between price and quantity demand. The supply curve, on the other hand, is upward sloping. It takes time, energy, and money to breed, raise, and sell pet snakes. At a low price, sellers wouldn't want to sell very many snakes because it's not profitable. So at a low price of 2, the quantity supplied would only be 10 snakes. At a high price of $100, sellers would have more incentive to bring a bunch of snakes to the market. Now we're finally there. It's time to put demand and supply together.
X marks the spot.
Let's analyze this graph. At a low price of 2, the quantity demanded, the amount buyers want to buy, will be a lot higher than the quantity supplied. At that price, buyers would want to buy 300, but sellers would only want to sell 10. This is called a shortage. If the price was up here at 100, then sellers would want to sell a bunch of snakes, but the buyers would only want to buy a few of them. This is called a surplus. At $20, the quantity demand equals the quantity supplied. So there's no shortage and there's no surplus. This is called equilibrium. Equilibrium is like the holy grail of supply and demand.
That's typical Carpenter.
Now you understand the graph and equilibrium, but we're not done. The supply and demand graph is a great tool for figuring out what's going to happen when there's a change in a market. For example, let's say that snakes and monkeys are substitute pets.
Where did this animal come from?
Now assume that the price of pet monkeys falls. How will this affect the price and quantity of pet snakes? It doesn't affect the supply curve for pet snakes at all. It affects the demand. Consumers that would normally buy pet snakes would now turn around and go buy more pet monkeys because their price is cheaper. This would decrease the demand for pet snakes, shifting the demand curve to the left. At every possible price, people are buying less pet snakes because they're buying monkeys instead. The graph shows the new equilibrium and the fact that the price and quantity will fall. Wait, why? Why does the price go down? After the demand curve shifted to the left, what would happen if sellers kept trying to sell snakes at the old equilibrium of $20? There would be a surplus. There would be way more snakes out in the market that consumers want to buy. Sellers would compete with each other because they want to get rid of all these excess snakes, which would drive the price down to the new equilibrium. Did you get that? Let's show a change again, except this time assume the people in this market have a pest control problem.
Oh, rats.
When people go to the pet store, they figure, let's get a pet that can help us get rid of the rats. What'll happen to the demand for pet snakes? If you said increase or shift to the right,
You have chosen wisely.
the graph shows the new equilibrium and says the price and the quantity will both go up. Why does the price go up? After the demand curve shifted to the right, now the quantity demanded is way greater than the quantity supplied. This is a shortage. Consumers want more pet snakes so they can eat the rats, but the sellers are running out of pet snakes to sell. Competition between buyers would bid up the price of snakes and give sellers more of an incentive to bring more to the market. Price would go up, quantity would go up. Understanding these markets is actually pretty easy because it's just the collective behavior of buyers and sellers. In the end, I don't think Indiana Jones would want to buy a pet snake or a pet monkey. I think he'd prefer a dog.
We named the dog Indiana. Dog? You are named after the dog?
All right, so there's lots of stuff to unpack in there, and I understand that this is kind of our first go around with the supply and demand curves, but go ahead, work on that worksheet that I've sent to your guys' OneNote. Go ahead and fill it out, and we're going to come back in about 10 minutes, and we're going to walk through some of those supply and demand graphs. All right, guys, so I hope that you guys had some time to work through and read through these different descriptions of the real-life market, implications of both supply and demand. I wanted to give you guys some real-world examples here, just so you guys are able to kind of apply and start to see maybe where in your personal life or when you're out online shopping, at the grocery store, see where a supply and market is coming into play. Also, the news is a great spot to watch and kind of see these different trends that are happening by looking at the market and the business world with more of a business-sided supply-demand lens. It's interesting to see the different factors, both on the supply end, producers and manufacturers being able to meet the needs of a growing market and just a growing population. The U.S. obviously is one of the big producers here of many different goods and services. So it's very interesting to take a look and kind of get focused and kind of seeing the business world with that lens and being able to distinguish between the supply and demand. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into a couple of these. We're going to walk through two of them. The first one that I'd like to look at is the iPhone 11. Now I trust you guys have read through all these, so I am not planning to read through everyone in depth. I am just kind of going to reiterate and kind of recap what Mr. Clifford went over in his video, kind of just giving you the basics to that graphical display of a supply and demand. So let's look and see what we got here. So obviously the iPhone 11 in big demand, enormous demand, they were not able to meet this demand. So basically, we're going to pull up this guy here. All right, so we have our basic supply and demand curve. So we're going to draw our demand, supply. Forgive me for my handwriting. Oh my goodness, guys. I just did those on the wrong ones. I am sorry about that. It has been quite a week. Oh my goodness. All right, we're gonna get this right now. Supply. Supply always goes on top. Demand is always on the bottom. Okay, so, and now we've talked about how this centerpiece right here is our equilibrium. So price is on that y-axis, and as this goes up, price increases. So we'll give you $2 signs there to remind you guys about that. So the demand for iPhone 11, extremely high. It is said that Apple was not able to meet the needs of such high demand. So what's going to happen here, and how we're going to display that on the graph, is we're going to have a shift in our demand curve. So we are going to shift it right, indicating that demand has grown. And now, if you guys look at where our equilibrium is, so we originally had it here, right here. Price was middle of the road. But now, once that shift has occurred, once there is a new product on the market, something that a lot of people are in the market for, want or would like to have, the demand or the amount that is willing to be bought is increased. However, because the supply is only limited, so I don't remember exactly where they said, but Apple was just, they were only able to produce a certain amount. And therefore, supply is not increasing and supply is not decreasing. However, our only factor that is affecting this situation right here is our demand. So our equilibrium is going to shift upwards. And when we look at our y-axis, that is an increase in our price. So hence why an iPhone 11 is a lot higher than your iPhone 7. So this is just one. This is one. Let's look at one more here. Hopefully I can remember where to put my supply and demand marks next time. So let's go. Let's look at the oil market. Yes. Okay, so this one is a little bit more interesting. You need to think a little bit deeper when it comes to the regards. It's not as intuitive, if you will, as the iPhone example. But let's go ahead and look. So right now, what we got is during the coronavirus, that big, the oil and fossil fuel industry was not they didn't have a great supply. And obviously with the different studies and research that's being done, more companies are working to go towards different power sources, not fossil fuels. So there are a couple different factors that we would like to consider while we look at this graph of the market of our oil. Oops, sorry, it has to be black. Okay, black. Supply, demand. All right, so we got a couple things going on here. We first are going to we can look at this graph and we can look at it through the lens of the pandemic and the effects that that has had on our market. So therefore, let's go ahead. If we are looking at it through that lens, we are seeing that people are not driving. Many businesses are sending their employees home, having to burn less fuel.